So if you're here for a presentation on does candy affect emotions, let me be the first one to tell you that you are currently in the wrong presentation. Now, if you have a queasy stomach, can't handle a lot of things, then I would suggest that you get out now. Now, what is our presentation, you ask? Well, let me tell you. Cannibalism, right or wrong, by me, Joey Tejada. Kind of like the baby kangaroo, even though it's spelled Joey instead of Joie. Not the point. I'm your host, and this is my presentation, so I hope you like it. So through the years, cannibalism has been seen as wrong, and it is, but what is it really? What causes it? And are there any exceptions to this cannibalism? Now I want you to keep in mind morals. Cannibalism is against human nature, and it's not a natural instinct for us. We weren't made to eat another human being, hunt them down in the street, and consume them. No. Maybe cows, if you're a cow out there or something, or a pig. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna eat you. I like bacon. So the definition is the act of eating one of your own. It's usually seen as ceremonial, more of a ritual, but the most important thing is choosing to do so. And by this I mean that you don't really have a choice, might be your last option, but you're consciously doing it, especially if there's other food sources out there. So moving on, the originated is unknown. I don't really know where it started from, but there have been fragments seen as worldwide, all across the globe. And it's actually seen in our earliest ancestors because of the fossils that we see or that we have dug up. I'll get back to that later in the presentation. Load. Technical difficulties, there we go. So what is it commonly used for? It's actually commonly used to initiate fear. This is usually during a war zone. It's also a symbol of love. It's a promise that you'll never forget that your deceased loved one or friend. And it's, in a way, it's getting closer to family. There are many cases of which females are eating each other's placebos in hopes of getting closer to that person. It's also symbolic, once again, love, maybe fear, even dehumanizing someone. And many times it's for religion. Human sacrifice is one of the most common go-tos when people think of cannibalism. And eating it, maybe so far as a religion like Catholicism, they say that they eat the body of Christ and drink the blood of Christ, and many religions are actually like that. But back in the olden days, like in Roman times, they would actually maybe eat one of their own. Some Indian tribes actually did that as a symbol to the gods. Once again, war initiate fear, and there are some religions that say that if you have a prisoner of war, you kill them as a war of a symbolic kind of thing, saying, hey, we are better than you. We will kill you no matter who you are. Now, there is a survival cannibalism. In October 24th, 1765, there was this boat called the Peggy, and 8 men were aboard, as well as cargo and other supplies. But supplies was not enough because, why? There was a storm that left the boat stranded in the middle of the ocean. There was 2 months stranded and no food. They ate their own clothing. Can you imagine that? What would you do if you were in that given situation? 2 months without food, your mind starts going, so, I mean, what would you do? On the Peggy, there's a slave that was considered cargo. She was shot, killed, and eaten. Now, the men made that last for 16 days, as long as they possibly could, and began to draw lots on who's going to be next of being eaten. They're going to go by one. Luckily, though, the Peggy was rescued before anyone else was killed and eaten. They actually waited a day because the person that got picked from the lots, kind of like the lottery. They picked a paper from the hat. was actually a well-respected man on the ship, and they didn't want to eat them, so they waited a day in hopes of being rescued. Luckily, they did get rescued. They admitted to eating human flesh, but do not consider themselves cannibalists. But are they cannibals? The law actually overlooked this because they did a humane way of dying. They did a shot to the head on the back, so they were kneeling and so that was humane. No one had to suffer. They drew lots, and that was seen as fair. They didn't say, hey, we don't like you, we're gonna eat you, done. When they set the sails, sailors do have unspoken rules. They're 3. They need to do anything to survive. There's always the possible of danger, and there's a great chance of death. So, in a way, they kind of knew that they had to eat their own brethren to survive if it had to come to it. So survival mode for cannibalism is actually broken down into a science because we're not naturally cannibalistic. Soon everyone gets hungry, and soon enough hunger becomes starvation, and that's when there's no blood cells delivering enough food throughout the body. So you can't think straight. Starvation, and when you come to the point of starvation, the body begins to use its own sources to survive. There are 3 stages. The first is carbohydrates and sugars begin to get eaten within your own body. Then goes your fat reserves. You become just skin and bone, so you can see your ribs and joints and all that, and fun. But the last point is that the body begins to eat its own protein, and that's the final stage. Your own protein, that means the body begins to eat itself, and your muscles begin to weaken a lot because muscles need protein. We knew this when we were kids. But your muscles need protein, and so thus you're still able to function, but you become all too weak. That means you become more and more vulnerable to that, to anything really. And so eating your own protein, many of you guys may not understand this, but there was a quote from the video that I used that it compared your body eating your own protein to lighting your house on fire to keep warm. You're killing yourself, basically. Once again, if there's still no food, the body begins to shut down what is not needed to survive. So it keeps the brain functioning, the lungs functioning, and the heart functioning. So those are basically the 3 organs that your body needs to survive. If there's still no food, the cerebral cortex of your brain shuts down. That's the outer part of your brain, and that holds human emotion. That pretty much separates us from being complete and utter monsters. Kind of like snakes or spiders killing something. You don't have no thought, you don't have any logic, there's no ethics there, it's all gone. You're on full-on survival mode, and at this point is when you start saying, hey, cannibalism is okay. It's the survival of the fittest at this stage. That means the men on the Peggy were pushed. Given the circumstances, they were pushed to their limits. 2 months without food, they ate whatever they could on them, but they just got pushed to the last stage that cannibalism was okay, and we were just another livestock. It was the will to live. It was seen as the beast inside. They were just surviving, but is that cannibalism? I don't think so, because they weren't given a choice. No choice, because once again, going back to the definition, it's choosing to do so, but given the circumstances, they couldn't think straight. Their body was shutting down. They couldn't comprehend exactly what happened. So why are they not cannibalists? I think so, because they did a humane way of killing. They didn't torture anyone. They prolonged the meat as much as possible. They went as far as they could without food. I personally can't go a day without eating. With my little snack or my little water, I can't can't do that. They also admitted to eating human flesh instead of hiding it. And they knew the circumstances upon the journey. Once again, the 3 unspoken rules when you become a sailor. So once again, the surviving, the circumstances were understandable. Death was inevitable, but they prolonged as much as possible. They had to survive, and their body was being shut down. They were not able to think right. And after they got rescued, there were no records of them going out on a killing spree and eating people off the streets. So, I mean, I don't qualify them as cannibals, because within that given situation, what would you do? I don't know what I would do. I mean, if I can't think straight, if I just have a reptilian-like brain, God knows what. So I'm going to take you on a journey here. Imagine you're on the vast ocean, alright? Just sailing along, cruising, no land in sight. You're free until a gigantic storm comes up. It starts rocking your boat, and thus leaving you stranded right there. No land in sight at all. And it's hot, the sun's beating down on you, and you're just so hungry. Okay, you're just so hungry, and you begin to look at your other crew members like this. Let that sink in for a second. Alright, is that cannibalism? Given all those circumstances in the span of 2 months and 16 days? Maybe even a little bit longer than that? No. That's surviving. Alright, will to live, beast inside, body shutting down, you have no choice. Now, the other symbolic of this is love, alright? This is seen as Papua New Guinea. An anthropologist named Shiley Lindenbaum discovered a cannibalistic tribe in Papua New Guinea. And they ate dead family and friends as a symbol of love, so that the dead was living inside the living, so to speak. But many other people saw this as good food, that, hey, this is delicious, I'm gonna keep eating it. It was, new food source and delicious. And in case you don't know where Papua New Guinea is, here's Australia, the Philippines. Many of you guys may know where that is because of the recent events. Papua New Guinea is just right here near the equator, near Indonesia. But there is a problem. There's a cycle going on. People kept dying. People kept dying. The people that kept dying were the people that were eating the dead. Why? Why do people eat the dead? Because out of love? Or because it's good food? Why do people keep dying? And why is the cycle never ending? Why can't they stop this when they see people were dying? But what was the reason people were dying? There was a disease called Gahhh, and that literally means shaking death. The stages are that the body trembles without control. They're unable to control their limbs, kind of like when you shake because you're cold and you begin to twitch and you can't stop. Unable to control bodily fluids and basically become a vegetable. You can't help yourself, you're just there. You can't take care of yourself. This can take the minimum of 9 months to go to death, but there are some cases that there have been years of between Gahhh begins to start, and there could be a span of 40 years of that in terrible, terrible condition, and then they finally die. Now, Gahhh actually affects the brain. There are a couple of pictures here. The normal side right here, and then the Gahhh side right here. Gahhh is actually just like CJD. It's another brain disease, similar, but Gahhh is much more intense. You see that the normal brain tissue doesn't have holes in it, so the Gahhh begins to eat at your brain to create holes. Same with CJD, which is similar to Gahhh. Here's some pictures of Gahhh. Gahhh affects the brain once again because of these things called prions. They're not bacteria, they're not virus, they're called prions. And we have some good prions, but these are deadly prions that end up eating at the brain. because since the brain is where pretty much your mission control, so to speak, since the holes are there, you begin to slowly shut down, just like this man right here. He can't help himself. And this is actually from a clip of, once again, the video that I used as a source. It's cited, and my work cited, in case you want to check that out. He's trembling, he can't get up, and he needs help. And that means that they're dying. So eating the dead died for a reason. Not okay. It's not healthy. Most of the dead was infected with Kuru, and that's how it spread. So you eat an infected agent, and then you become infected yourself. But it was seen as a good food source. Some say for love, and keep the person inside the living, once again. But most of the tribe actually said it was for good food. So that is actually seen as cannibalism, because number one, they had other sources. There are animals there were hunters. Number two, even though they are dead, it's not healthy to eat another human being, especially if you know that they were infected with kudu, because you will become infected yourself, and that's not okay. It was also seen as convenience food supply. I mean, I love my grandma, but I'm not gonna go out and eat her. No, I feel like that's disrespectful. And those eating the dead were the ones that were dying. There's clearly, that's the cycle. Dead person infected with the kudu. They eat the person, people become infected, they die, and it just goes in a cycle, like a little wheel. Eating the dead continued, you would die. They're dying because of kudu, because they were infected with kudu. But granted, there are some people immune to this. Now, the reason that is because their prions in the brain, they're mutated. So this is from genes that they mutated from their ancestors all the way till today. That means that their ancestors more than likely ate human flesh and developed a immune system that is able to go against these prions, and it's seen as a mutation. It's not normal. So love and good food, it's not healthy. Don't go out and eat your grandma. That's how the spread of diseases start, and not everyone is immune to this. I don't recommend doing it at all. Very few are. Out of thousands that were tested for this mutation, less than half did have the immunity against this. Number two, it's against the law to dig up a person and consume them. You could go to jail, you could get a fine, jail, prison, psych ward, never seen daylight again. I personally like daylight. Where our bodies are complex, there's chemicals entering in and out of us at all times, especially with today's fast food, today's other chemicals that people see, and medications. It's not safe, and it's wrong. It is wrong. You are a human, you have morals, you have ethics. Prove that you are better than the ancestors that you were before. Alright, we're not animals anymore, we're not beasts, we have intellects, we know what books are, we can read, we invented the wheel, we have a light bulb, we have electricity. I am speaking through you through this tiny camera. So I mean, we're better than that. Alright, we are better than that. And how is eating someone respectful? I don't think it is. I'm going to eat you because I love you. No. Just no. It was a lifestyle. They live like that, but how is it wrong? Well, you know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. I'm sure deep down they know it's wrong. They were eating out of love, though, eating out of respect, but it's not healthy. Because they kept dying. It was disease, bacteria, prions, And actually, in these rituals, most human bodies were left out in the sun for 3 days so that the soul was not trapped inside. And they see it's unhealthy to eat a human soul. I think it's unhealthy to eat another human being. The living conditions were not good. Because once again, bacteria, there are other animals eating, it was not okay. But what if they didn't do it out of love? What if they did cannibalism to initiate fear? There was actually a case in American Southwest that there were smashed bones found of humans. There was no love on these markings whatsoever. It was actually seen as animalistic, beastly, inhumane, awful, awful, awful. They said that this was to dehumanize and spread fear in other people, and this was a message from one tribe to another that they wanted power over these tribes. There was, upon further research, there was no shortage of food or livestock or crops found in this American Southwest wave in the BC times. So clearly there was something going on there. It was savage. It was awful. There were bone fragments smashed, burned, just anything that you can think that is awful for a human being physically to kill them. That's what they found upon the bones, the markings on the bones. And what does this say? That it was not a necessity, that in the definition they had a choice on whether to do this or not, and they took the cannibalistic way of being an animal, being absolutely brutal to these other tribes, and that they just wanted power. They wanted to initiate fear, power, and it was a warning and a message saying, hey, you guys are just livestock, we can kill you, we will eat you, you are less than human, we are in no way, shape, or form on the same level. We're here, you're down here, and we will crush you. There was also a ritual burial. They chopped up the dead, buried them all together, and ate the flesh beforehand. So they chopped them up, they ate them like a piece of fried chicken, and then buried them all together because, hey, we shouldn't care about this. Kind of like when we go to KFC or something, I eat the bone, put them all together, put them in the trash. Dehumanizing, doesn't matter, doesn't care. And that was back then. But what about now? Is there cannibalism now? The answer is yes, in this day and age. In China, there have been abortions, but female fetuses are sold and consumed. So people in China, they have a baby. Usually if it's a girl, they have the fetus and they sell it and it's consumed. Because of the one child per family policy. Because of this law, there have been many cases of which in China they abort their child early, but what do they do with the fetus? They eat it. Yes, they eat a child. It's seen as a delicacy. Male babies are also aborted, and that's when a male fetus that's called as a high delicacy. So female fetuses are called as a delicacy, while males are seen as a high delicacy. And for the reason that most people actually do this is to have sexual vigor, and it's a belief. They believe that, hey, if I eat this baby, the baby's youth will come into me and I can do activities better, so to speak. Awkward. But are there cases in America? And yes, many of you may have heard of this certain case. There are many like it, but I tried to find the most recent one. There was a man beat to death by an axe, and the brain was eaten by the suspect because he had a vision saying that if he ate the brain of this man, that he would understand human behavior. And he also ate the eyes so that he could see into the spirit realm. Now, that's insane. A little bit, because I don't think that worked. The body was actually found in 2012, but the cousin of the suspect testified in 2011. He said the cousin of the suspect said that he saw the suspect with bloody clothes, chopsticks, as well as the suspect told him that he ate a brain and eyes with sake, and that's an alcoholic drink if you didn't know that. So the suspect was qualified as insane and put into the psych ward, which is understandable. But eating a person is equally as insane, even if you see them as good food. You are human, you have morals. Once again, we are better than that. We can surpass past this, and it's not healthy, man, and it's illegal. Is it worth going to jail just to have a taste of that your neighbor down the street with a little bit of beer and soy sauce? No, it's not. So cannibalism views, there are the many views of cannibalism: surviving, eating the fallen, the dead in hopes of you to live, and it's the survival of the fittest. So there's actually two ways of surviving. Surviving meaning the Peggy, going back to the beginning of my presentation, of the 8 men whose bodies were shutting down and they literally had no choice. That is not seen as cannibalism. That is seen as a terrible situation, horrible circumstances to be in. And survival of the fittest, going back to the fear thing, when you have plenty of choices, but you choose to eat little Johnny down the street because he's weak, small, feeble, and vulnerable, and you need to prove your masculinity to kill him and eat him. Alright, that's not okay. Not okay at all. Especially if you torture him. There's other cases such as love, as they'd see it as a sign of respect and caring and good food, okay? Number 1, the dead died for a reason. There was a reason that they were dead. Number 2, when the person is dead, gross, no. Because especially if they died a natural death, it's not okay. Not okay, because you could get infected for whatever thing, because blood starts rotting the second that there's a corpse there. It starts to decompose the second that it happens, alright? It turns hard. Bacteria starts growing. So it's not good food. And it's not out of respect. It's like, hey, grandma, I love you. You're like a piece of fried chicken now. No, not okay. There's also seen as power. You have power over these people because you are able to eat them. And that is fear and a warning and a message. Alright, so you are controlling them by fear. You want power, and it's a warning and a message saying that, hey, I'm going to kill this one person, eat them in front of you, especially if it's a grand chief. If someone ate our president, I would be scared. I'd be terrified. World War III would be like right around the corner because we're trying to defend ourselves. And it's also seen as a belief, kind of like in China, once again, eating those fetuses in hopes of gaining more youth, more power to do certain activities. Not okay either, because that's really disgusting. On the continuation of cases today of the China, they eat dead babies, and it's seen as high-class food because of the one-child policy. And there's also one child per family policy has actually driven them toward this. I mean, woman finds out she's pregnant, they already have a kid, need to pay for an abortion or pop it out, sell it for money, eat my child. No. There's also a treatment of the babies. Treatment of babies, they treat them as food. There have been cases that Chinese police have found bags upon bags upon bags of babies stuffed in them, some of them actually still alive. So it's like going to a grocery store, putting a bunch of babies in your bag, tying the bag up and just throwing it in your truck saying, "So I'm grocery shopping, honey. I really hope that you know how to make this delicious baby soup, baby." No. This is a dehumanized kind of thing, but it's also seen as a luxury in China, but it is illegal there, just saying. It's also morally wrong and murder, okay? Let's emphasize on these 2 points. Morally wrong and murder, okay? Murder, killing people. That we know is all wrong. You don't decide of who gets to live, who gets to die. And you shouldn't be the one to decide, we don't want this baby, we're gonna treat it like a thing of fried chicken. Come on, let's split it. No. And it will not help you, so to speak, with certain sexual activities. Won't help you. I can guarantee that. And in America, was that insanity? Killing? Is that ever okay? No, it's not. No, it's not. I don't think he was insane. I think he was just evil. But there has been a case of that he formally apologized to the family. Maybe, I can't say it for the guy, maybe because he got caught, or maybe he was actually legitimately sorry and he understood what happened. Maybe he was just evil in that moment, and maybe he just has a mental disorder. That's what insanity is, mental disorder, a horrible mental way of thinking, in my opinion. Yes, evil. There are many cases of if people eat another human being, that it's Satanism, worship Satan, and in a way we associate Satan with evil, terrible things, hell. Just to let you know, all are equal, and it's illegal to kill people. Eating pretty much means no respect, and that, hey, I am better than you. Alrighty, not good things, not good qualities to have in a person. Is it ever okay? There are certain circumstances, like surviving, and it's a last resort, seen on the Peggy. But that is seen as arguable, but I see it as okay given the circumstances, because number one, there's science behind it, and your body literally begins to shut down, and you can't think right. You have to survive. You have to survive. But there are other cases like love, but there's disease, rituals, the rituals usually make them go bad. And once again, die, leave it there. The second that there's a corpse, it begins to decompose the second that it begins to die. And that's how diseases spread. Bacteria, kudu. I wouldn't want to have kudu, would you? And terrible, terrible living conditions. So, and there's also seen as power. To dehumanize, to be inhumane, to torture, and to spread fear and terror to other people. So it seems like my video actually got cut short a little bit. Is it ever okay? Given the circumstances, surviving was last resort in the Peggy, and it's arguable, but given the circumstances, I think it's okay because they didn't consciously make that decision. They didn't wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to eat that little slave over there, and we're going to do a lottery kind of thing. They didn't wake up to that. For the love, it's for disease, disease made because of the rituals. It makes meat go bad because normally they do a 3-day kind of thing, leaving the dead body there by itself and the second that the corpse is killed, it begins to decompose right away. So then bacteria starts to form, the blood starts to decompose the body, and a lot of bad mojo starts to happen there. They also, with the power that it was inhumane, that on the other hand was a choice, And they did wake up in the morning saying, hey, let's go terrorize people and get more power and put the fear of God and terror into them so that we can establish a hierarchy that we are better than them. My conclusion is that when you have love for love, people die for a reason. Get them a nice funeral, the best that you can get, because that I think is respectful. Put flowers on their tombstone and pray to them. You can be like, Grandma, I'm sorry. I wish we could have made things right. For stuff like that. For the terror part of putting the fear of God in people, that is not insanity, that is evil, that is murder, and that is also illegal in this day of age. Not worth going to prison over, really, for the sake of eating little Johnny boy down the street because he's vulnerable and small. As well as the belief, let me tell you something, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. Go get some medication, go do some yoga, get those muscles going. Right. Doctors are here for a reason. Am I right? Hoping you were getting a presentation on candy. You got something a little bit better, didn't you? No. I'm not sorry that you had to go through this. Oh, look. Wait. Zombie candy. Maybe you did. So here's my works cited page. The two works cited I actually used was this one, the History Channel. That's where I got most of my information. And the Sheer Cannibalism Chinese Cook. That's where I got my Chinese information. So bye!